Do you want to know more about how you can eat for better health and longevity, and how your diet and lifestyle can play a part in chronic disease? Then you're in the right place. I'm Claire Day.
And I'm Daisy Lund, and we are both plant-based doctors with a passion for improving nutritional education. In this podcast, we will bring you all the latest medical evidence on how a plant-based diet can improve your health whilst being kinder to the planet and fairer to the animals that we share it with.
Twice a month, we bring you interviews from experts in the field with a focus on an important topic related to plant-based health, all while sharing recipes and food ideas.
So, welcome to, in a nutshell, the Plant-Based Health Professionals podcast.
Hey!
Hello.
Hello, lots of energy.
Hi,
Of
Dr. Gregor.
course.
Thanks for joining us. How are you?
Good.
Brilliant. So, welcome, Dr. Gregor. And before we start, can you tell us a bit about your journey to eating plant-based and how you came to advocating for a whole food plant-based diet in your career?
Yeah, it actually all goes back to my grandmother. I was just a kid when my grandma was sent home in a wheelchair to die. She had diagnosed with end-stage heart disease, already had so many bypass operations, basically run out of plumbing at some point. Confined to a wheelchair, crushing chest pain, her life was over at age 65.
Gosh.
But then she heard about this guy, Nathan Pritikin, one of our early lifestyle medicine pioneers here in the States. And what happened next is actually detailed in Pritikin's biography. He talks about Frances Gregor, my grandmother. They wheeled her in and she walked out. So she was given her medical death sentence at age 65, thanks to a healthy diet. Was able to enjoy another 31 years on this planet till age 96 to continue to enjoy her 6 grandkids, including me. That's why I went into medicine. That's why I practice lifestyle medicine, why I started the website nutritionfacts.org, why I wrote the book How Not to Die, why all the proceeds from all of my books are all donated directly to charity. I just want to do for everyone's family what Pritikin did for my family.
Amazing.
Right, I'm sure you're going to recognise this next question, which is a bit of a challenge, really, because we're big fans of your previous work, both the book that you've just mentioned, How Not to Die, and How Not to Diet. And whilst we're excited about this new book, How Not to Age, and the fact that you've looked at 20,000 research papers, or you and your team, in putting it together, which sounds incredible, what more is there actually to say?
Well, that's interesting. Every time I feel the exact same way. Every time I go into a book, I'm like, look, I've already done it all. Like, what more could there up the, but oh my God, I learned so much. I changed my own diet, everything. I mean, there's just so much out there. In fact, so much that didn't even exist. I have chapters in this new book on concepts that weren't even discovered until after I actually graduated from medical school. So there's just this tremendous body of literature. I think, it's important to recognize that, no one dies of old age. So there was a study with 42,000 consecutive autopsies found that centenarians, those who lived to be 100 or more, died in 100% of cases from disease, even though they appear perfectly fine. Even their physicians out there were fine. We actually did an autopsy. They died most prominently from heart disease, was the leading killer, as it is for men and women otherwise. And so you're like, wait a second, if death is from disease, why wasn't How Not to Die all the longevity book anybody needs? I recognize that there is a risk factor that I did not talk about in How Not to Die, and that risk factor is aging. Yes, having a high cholesterol can increase your risk of heart disease up to 20-fold, but, an 80-year-old may have 500 times the risk of a heart attack as a 20-year-old, right? Now, the reason we talk about things like cholesterol is because it's a modifiable risk factor. But what if aging was modifiable too? What if the rate of aging was modifiable too? And that really, because if that's the case, then, oh my God, we could hit all the age-related diseases kind of in one fell swoop. And so that was what really excited me about this book, tackling one more pesky little risk factor, growing old.
Yeah, fantastic. And, you know, what we loved about the book was how you described the health span rather than lifespan. You know, we're both primary care doctors, and we see a lot of elderly people who are living their last years of life or their last decade or more of life in, you know, in ill health. And, you know, we'd really like to know how not only can we age better, but live the healthier long lives, not just long lives, but healthier long lives. And what key things do you want people to know?
Yeah, absolutely. It's not just about adding years to your life, but life to your years. You know, when asked how long do you wish to live, there was a survey, and they offered the choice: you live to 85, 120, 150, or indefinitely. To my surprise, most people, 2/3, said they'd prefer only live to 85. But when the question was reframed to how long do you wish to live in perfect guaranteed mental and physical health, then all of a sudden everyone switches to unlimited, right? And that raises this concept of health span, right? The period of life spent not just alive, but in good health, meaning free from chronic disease and disability. You know, what's the point of living longer if we're not going to live it vibrantly? And so here in the States, for example, we are living longer than we did decades ago, but we're actually living sicker. We're living fewer years in health, fewer functional years, meaning fewer years in which we're able to perform basic life activities like walking a quarter mile, standing unassisted, being able to, stand or sit for a few hours without having to lie down. So we're living longer, but we're living sicker. So that's why both health span and lifespan were both top of mind in researching this book.
Yeah, I mean, I think we both completely agree with that. But in the UK, certainly, it's often all about motivating people and getting people interested in something. And I was wondering, is it going to be relevant to everyone? And can you actually say that for some people, the damage will have just gone too far?
Oh, well, I mean, the good news is that we have tremendous power over our health, destiny, and longevity. The vast majority of premature death and disability is preventable with a healthy enough diet and lifestyle. And I think if you look at some of these disease reversal studies, like the Ornish studies on heart disease, what is the median age, right? These are people in their 60s, right? Wait a second. So they've been eating these terrible diets their entire lives, and after 60 years of pummeling their body, poof, within a matter of months, all of a sudden you see this reversal, angina going away, opening up arteries without drugs, without surgery. Amazing, suggesting their bodies wanted to be healthy all along, but were just never given a chance. And one of the most amazing things I learned in my medical training was that within 15 years of stopping smoking, your lung cancer risk approaches that of a lifetime non-smoker. Like, isn't that amazing? Your lungs can clear out all that tar, and eventually it's almost as if you never started smoking at all, right? And every morning of our smoking life, that healing process starts until, wham, first cigarette of the day. Re-injuring our lungs with every puff, just like we can re-injure our arteries with every bite, when all we had to do all along, the miracle cure, is just stand back, get out of the way, stop re-damaging ourselves, and let our body's natural healing processes bring us back towards health, right? Yes, you can choose moderation and, hit yourself with a smaller hammer, but why beat yourself up at all?
So this is really promising. So you're saying that actually it's never too late. We can just pick up your book, start no matter what age we are. And your book goes into a lot of detail about the science of no less than 11 different aging pathways. Can you give the listeners who perhaps aren't familiar a brief outline of perhaps the most important ones?
Yeah, no. So just to emphasize, never too late to stop smoking, never too late to start moving, never too late to start eating healthier. Even people in their 80s can add years of life with simple, common sense, basic lifestyle behaviors like not smoking, eating more fruits and vegetables, regular exercise, and not being obese. Literally years of life, even starting in one's 80s. So I'm so glad you brought that up. Part one of the book is kind of like the nerdy section of the book, where I go through these 11 aging pathways, offering kind of these are the most promising strategies for kind of slowing this sands of time, ending each with kind of practical proposals on what you can actually do about it in terms of these lifestyle and diet interventions. And so just broadly, we're talking about boosting the anti-aging enzymes and hormones, which is AMPK, FGF21, sirtuins, telomerase, while suppressing the pro-aging enzymes and hormones like mTOR and IGF-1. And then decreasing glycation, inflammation, oxidation, senescence, while preserving autophagy and our telomeres and slowing the epigenetic clock. So all kind of fancy sounding scientific terms, but I really do try to kind of break it down into easily understandable, doable, kind of practical takeaways.
Yeah, absolutely. That's how I read the book. As you say, the first bit is very scientific, lots of data, but lots of really good points and easy to follow things in the second half. And one of those that I particularly loved, given that we're plant-based health professionals UK, and we feel that UK population in general doesn't eat enough legumes. We love it in your book entitled Legume Longevity. Could you tell the listeners a bit about any studies on beans and legumes and how they
absolutely. Well, I'm shocked to hear that Britons aren't eating enough legumes. I mean, that's the whole thing. That's the whole reason you go to the UK, so you can eat beans for breakfast. Like, that's the traditional fare, right? And we all really need to replicate that. Yeah, in terms of anti-aging foods, according to the data from the Global Burden of Disease Study, which is the single largest systemic analysis of risk factors for death and disability in history, funded by the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, the number one kind of largest life expectancy gains would be expected from eating more legumes, beans, split peas, chickpeas, lentils. So if there's like one thing we could do, is eat more beans or lentil soup or hummus. And this is presumed to be because they're the most concentrated source of prebiotics like fiber and resistant starch, which feed the probiotic good bacteria in our gut, like lactobacillus and bifidobacteria, to make the beneficial postbiotics like butyrate and acetate, which really do the hard lifting in terms of reducing inflammation and boosting immunity and improving muscle strength in frail individuals. So legumes certainly rule the roost kind of on a per serving basis, though actually on an ounce per ounce basis, nuts are actually associated with the lowest risk of premature death compared to any other food group. So I do recommend a palmful of walnuts a day as well.
Interesting. Yeah. And I mean, that is our mission, to get the UK population eating more beans and nuts, isn't it, Claire?
Definitely.
Fantastic.
And actually Daisy's favorite nut is the walnut. So you're going to be even more pleased to hear that, aren't you, Daisy?
Every day.
So I'm fascinated by these 11 different pathways, but when we're thinking about it as GP, so that's your family doctor, we're actually just often focusing on loss of bone density and loss of muscle mass that you've mentioned. And you've mentioned nuts and beans. Do you have any other specific foods that we can push people towards to tackle these problems, and how they might do that through a whole food plant-based diet?
Oh, absolutely. So dark green leafy vegetables earn their place in the anti-aging eat as the vegetable most associated with a longer lifespan. The nitrates in greens, which we tend to associate with like beet juice or something, but actually the most concentrated sources are green leafy vegetables. They improve age-related declines in muscle and artery function, as well as slow our metabolic rate, which is something you typically only see with like caloric restriction and, the candle that burns half as bright, burns twice as long. But instead of walking around starving all the time, you can just eat a big salad. And then the sulforaphane in cruciferous vegetables, these are the cabbage family vegetables like broccoli, kale, collards, cauliflower, can improve immune function and boost the detox enzymes in our liver and airways, particularly important for people who lived in kind of in areas with air pollution. Berries earn their place as the fruit most associated with a longer lifespan. I talk about the benefits of amla, which is dried Indian gooseberry powder, and the anthocyanin pigments that in berries thought to account for their benefits in terms of cognitive function, eyesight, inflammation, blood sugar, artery function, cholesterol, though they do get cleared from our bloodstream within about 6 hours. So that's why I really want to try dosing every meal with either berries, so like berries for dessert or something, or hibiscus tea, another source of anthocyanins, or there's savory sources like red or purple cabbage or purple sweet potatoes, ways you can get these important pigments in kind of throughout the day.
Yeah, that's really interesting because often we talk about sarcopenia or osteopenia, so bone density loss and muscle loss as we get older. And we focus a lot on protein and protein intake. And I read in your book that you mentioned there risks of things like IGF-1 increasing with more animal protein, and certainly people who have high protein diets. And you mentioned actually sticking to the 0.8 grams per kilogram recommendation. So can you give us a bit more detail about that? Because I think as we get older, people are often trying to eat more protein, but how do we mitigate the risks if we are sticking to whole food plant-based diet?
Right. The single most effective strategy to prevent age-related muscle weakness, treat muscle loss, improve physical function is resistance exercise, strength training exercise. Even just a temporary drop in physical activity levels, like, someone goes in for surgery and has bed rest for a week, can rapidly worsen matters, particularly among older men and women. And so that's really the key. It turns out that taking extra protein for older men and women over age 65 have no effect on muscle mass, strength, or performance, whether you have normal muscle mass or sarcopenic or you're frail. It just doesn't work. And in fact, plant-based sources of protein are preferable because of the baggage that accompanies protein from animal sources, such as the saturated fat, and cholesterol, etc. And then all the good stuff you get along with the plant proteins, such as, the prebiotics and the anti-inflammatory nature, the antioxidant, alkaline-forming aspects of plant-based nutrition. There are specific plant foods that have been shown in randomized controlled trials to actually improve functional mobility. For example, 2 cups a day of blueberries was able to do it. A daily half teaspoon of garlic powder was able to improve muscle mass over placebo, and a tablespoon a day of natural cocoa powder has been shown to improve both muscle strength and function. The nitrates in greens can also boost muscle strength, muscle mass. So there are some things we can do about diet, but really it really boils down to exercise. And in terms of protein in general, when it comes to aging and protein, less really may be more. Reducing protein intake down to recommended levels, the 0.8 grams per healthy kilogram body weight, is the only thing that I could find that actually was able to help block all 11 of the aging pathways, like boosting NAD and improving immunity and decreasing oxidative stress and inflammation, insulin resistance, as well as the cancer-promoting hormone IGF-1. And so with no extra benefit from extra protein for muscle mass or strength, instead you get this excess protein that most people are eating, causes a drop in the pro-longevity hormone FGF21, a worsening of the age-accelerating enzyme mTOR. So we really should try to kind of restrict down to recommended levels.
Yeah, I think we're all so obsessed with protein, aren't we? In particularly sort of in the modern era of social media, and you sort of see protein everywhere. But actually you're saying exercise could be, if not as important, more important.
Oh, absolutely. Right. You need sufficient protein, but excess protein can be damaging for longevity.
Yeah. And when you say resistance exercise, can you give the listeners a few examples?
Oh, so we're talking about like weight training or resistance bands, these kind of elastic bands where you can get that same kind of resistance against our muscles. And so you don't need to, you don't need a home gym or anything. There's all sorts of things you can do with just simple, a couch or a chair, whatever, to get that resistance exercise in. Do squats. You can do this, all sorts of things. I encourage people to check out online to put together not just aerobic fitness, which is important for the most important muscle in the body, our heart, right? Number one killer of men and women is heart disease. Got to keep our heart healthy, and that comes from the aerobic activity, getting our heart rate up. But particularly important for older men and women, we also want to add that strength training component as well as balance training. Since the number one risk factor, the number one reason people break their bones is not necessarily their bone density, but because of falls. And so fall prevention, critically important. How do we do that? We do that lower body strength training and balance training can dramatically decrease the risk of falls, and that translates into a decreased risk of bone fracture later in life.
Yeah, brilliant. So I know some of us hate going to the gym or haven't got access to a gym, but as you say, these are things we could just do at home. Is that right?
Absolutely. In fact, the book's so heavy, you could just kind of curl the book,
No, I mean, speaking of the book, if somebody's buying the book, then you're home and dry. They're interested in this concept of aging. They might be more interested in how it's going to make them look younger, but the interest is there. But some of your food suggestions, and you've mentioned a couple of them already, the hibiscus thing, and some people will be thinking, oh, what's hibiscus tea and things like that. They do seem like a lot of work, and the micro dosing, trying to get it in every meal. And you mentioned foods like the barberries and the black cumin. Do you really think that we can get people interested in this approach when they may feel just more afraid of getting cancer than getting older in the first instance?
Yeah, I mean, so certainly the concern with a book like this is you don't want to get people to get lost in the weeds, right? I mean, and really, and that's why in the conclusion, I really do, take the step back, say, look, it's not all or nothing. It doesn't require drastic changes, just a basic common sense, lifestyle factors really could mean difference between a decade of lifespan, of healthy lifespan. This is just the basics, the fruits and vegetables, the not smoking, not being obese, exercising regularly. And it's never too late. Start eating healthier, start moving, stop smoking. That's the important thing. That you're like 80% of the way there just doing that. Now, then if you want to do the next step, once you have all those basics down, you want to start tweaking around the edges, and adding particularly healthy fruits and vegetables, etc. Then, I have the resources for you, but I don't want the kind of heft of the book to intimidate people from making those first steps that really are the most important steps.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's why, particularly where we're coming from on the podcast of the plant-based health professionals, it's so good to see the nuts and the greens and the berries at the top of the list. And we're always trying to get people to focus on those. But you mentioned the anti-aging 8. I know we still want people to buy the book, but can you say a bit more about that? Is it as simple as that?
Oh, so this is kind of to complement my my daily dozen checklist of all the healthiest of healthy things I encourage people to fit into their daily routine on from How Not to Die, available as a free app at Dr. Greger's Daily Dozen. And so that's where I, talk about many of these things, flax seeds every day and quarter teaspoon turmeric on down the list. And so really try to highlight specific foods and actions that have the potential for really the best opportunities to slow aging and improve longevity to kind of complement the daily dozen. So we've talked about some of them, like the beans, like the berries, like the greens. And then, the rest of the anti-aging 8 talks about naturally boosting this enzyme cofactor called NAD+, something called xenohormesis, microRNAs, calorie restriction, protein restriction, methionine restriction. Actually, that's probably the single most important thing we can do. And so that's either you can reduce your methionine either by eating less overall, caloric restriction, or just restricting protein, keeping your calories the same, or keeping your protein intake the same, but just by switching from animal sources to plant sources can drop down your branched-chain amino acid intake, your sulfur-containing amino acids like cysteine and methionine. And that will have many of the anti-aging benefits that can work against all 11 of those pathways.
Nice. So plants over pills, as you mentioned in your book.
Plants. There we go. Plants over pills. Sometimes pills are necessary, but we should always, we should reach for the fridge before the medicine cabinet if we can.
Absolutely, particularly when it comes to pills that people might buy that are not licensed or
Oh
are
God,
making
right.
false claims about anti-aging, and certainly
Yeah, sure.
when it's as simple as eating, like you say, your nuts, greens, legumes, and whole grains. And talking about eating, Dr. Gregor, we can't let you go without asking what you're going to be eating or what you eat on a regular basis. And our listeners love to hear what we're eating for dinner every night. I don't know what time it is in America, but do you know what you're going to be
Oh,
eating?
well,
It's
yeah. So
lunchtime.
Daily Dozen is, if you want to eat on a daily basis, that's the whole point of the Daily Dozen was I was trying to figure out, it was just like a little whiteboard on the fridge trying to figure out what I should be eating every day. But I actually don't know what I'm going to eat for supper. But I ran out of leftovers yesterday. But for lunch, I had purple sweet potatoes. So you can get these Hawaiian purple sweet potatoes. I actually make up 69% of the diet of the Okinawan Japanese back when they were among the longest living population, second longest living. And they are delicious. And the mistake I used to make was microwaving them, and then I'd like air fry them. But they taste so much better baked because they get this like caramelized, wonderful flavor. And oh my God. So what was I doing all my life? So now you just, you think ahead. In about an hour at like 375 degrees. Ooh, I don't know what that is in Celsius. Sorry. And they're just
180.
then you just and you
I
got
would do them at
snacks at
180.
all times. Stick them in your pockets. They're good hand warmers. Anyway,
Love
so that was. I've got this. This is my kind of my interview day this week, and so it's like I don't got a lot of time to cook, but I
So
know
what,
I could have they're super satiating, delicious. I can sneak them in between interviews. So yeah, that's my lunch today. This morning I had oat groats with it's pomegranate season. And so oat groats and pomegranate, and walnuts and wild blueberries and flax and wheat germ and cocoa powder, a chocolate balsamic vinegar. Oh, and fresh mint from the garden, which is slowly dying. So I had to eat a lot of it. Yeah,
very
that was my kind of like, yeah, delicious,
eh,
delicious.
that sounds
You,
amazing. Yeah. Sorry,
yeah,
go on.
I was just gonna say you sound very easy to cater for when you're over in London next year. And I
Oh,
think
I can't wait.
yeah, we're very excited about that. So but like just some simple ingredients, just a couple of sweet potatoes. I don't know, I haven't seen the purple ones here recently. Have you,
Oh,
Daisy?
No, I think they were sold out apparently because after Dan Buettner's what was it,
ah,
the Blue Zones documentary, apparently everyone's trying to find purple sweet
I
potato.
love it. I love it. Fantastic. Oh, well, I've got my sources, so I better not divulge. But yeah, that's one of my favorite things to take on airplanes, right? Because they're so light and they're so, and the purple ones tend to be a little drier than orange sweet potatoes. So you don't have to worry about it kind of oozing everywhere, and yeah, it just makes a good snack.
Very nice, yeah. And Claire, you mentioned Dr. Gregor's coming to London in January. We can put a link for the tickets on the show notes, can't we? Because we'll be there and we're looking forward to meeting you in
Can't
person.
Yeah,
wait. Can't wait. I'm
yeah,
so looking forward to it.
yeah.
Excellent.
Yeah, I mean, we'll check whether there are actually any tickets left before we put the link there, because I think
Okay.
that could be
Well,
a bit
I'm doing a
disappointing for
couple.
people.
I'm doing a couple talks, so hopefully there'll be one at least that's open.
Oh,
Brilliant.
fabulous. Yeah.
Have we got time to ask you, Claire, what you're having for dinner tonight?
You can do. I think it's a little bit, it might bamboozle you a bit, Dr. Grieger, because
Okay.
I've actually got a recipe ready,
Ooh.
and I was going to tell Daisy about the fact that I made it for my plant-based colleague. Well, they're not plant-based at work, but I made it for my colleagues. I do a kind of lunch on a Tuesday, and I've got to wow them basically, to bring them around to this way of eating. They're not naturally coming to me
Okay.
on it. So I made like a sort of tomato and onion garlic sauce with some cumin and some
Nice.
turmeric and some
Nice.
sweet paprika in there.
Ooh.
And yeah, you've got the garlic in there. The bed of that, on top of that, you put a slice of crisscrossed roast aubergine, which
Uh-huh.
the flesh is just falling off it after it's been in the oven for about 40 minutes.
Mm-hmm.
And then on top of that, you do like a mince, but of course it's not mince. It's going to be like lentils and
Mm-hmm.
onions and
Ooh.
some garlic and also some more turmeric and some more cumin and some cinnamon.
Ooh,
did I mention
nice.
cinnamon? That's going in there as well. Maybe you've got some good things to say about cinnamon, but it's in there.
Yeah.
And then on top, some tahini mixed with coriander, basil, and what's the third herb? Coriander, basil, and another green herb, parsley. Yeah. All
Nice.
blended together, drizzled over with the tahini, a little bit thinned down. It looked spectacular.
Sounds delicious.
So I'm doing that again tonight because I'm on a roll with it.
You're
Daisy,
making me hungry.
well, I'm going to go over to Daisy because she's always got a good one.
Well, I can't match that because you're all about the herbs and spices, aren't you? It's just amazing. I'm going to have a tofu curry. I suppose there's lots of spices in
That's
that.
lots of spices in curry.
There is. And actually this time I made it with fresh tomatoes. So rather than passata or a canned tomato, I actually made it with fresh tomatoes, and it makes a world of difference actually. The sauce is delicious, very fresh. Lovely.
Fantastic. All right, well, we'll wrap things up there. Thank you so much for talking to us. And better luck with the book, because obviously we want everybody to be eating like this, and anything that gives them some motivation is fantastic in my view. So hopefully everybody will be getting it for Christmas.
Fantastic.
Thank
Looking
you
forward
so
to seeing you both.
Thank
Keep up the
you.
great work.
Thank you.
We're trying. Yeah. Bye.